Hello everyone and welcome back to Rule the Roost podcast. It's a happy place here, as is Newcastle. That's a happy place, isn't it, Conor Mummery?
It is at the moment, apart from my house, because my Newcastle supporting girlfriend is currently out and it's just me wallowing at the moment. So,
You, just for anybody that isn't aware, you do live in Newcastle, don't you, Conor?
I do, yeah, I do, and I enjoy it
And
most of the time.
You're a Tottenham Hotspur Football Club fan as well.
I am seemingly the only one that anyone in Newcastle knows, which is good.
So, how's it been the past few days, mate?
Well, fortunately for the actual game, I was down south, half pre-planned. Unfortunately, I was working, so I had to watch every minute of it. I couldn't just pretend it wasn't happening. But yeah, I mean, I received a few messages from my northern friends. My girlfriend said she had about 40 people getting in touch asking about my well-being, which is nice. But yeah, I'm back up here now. I don't know. I didn't think it was going to be that bad. Obviously, I did sort of feel like something really horrible could happen. I mean, the last week or so up here, they've been billing it as their sort of biggest game of the season, which it is, you know, by the cup final, obviously. For top four for them is huge, and I just didn't feel that coming from our side at all. So I thought that we were definitely going into it with differing intensities, which didn't bode well.
The mad thing is, like, I wouldn't have been surprised if you'd have told me before the game, right, you're going to get done like 4-5-1. Obviously, I know it's 6-1, but 4-5-1, all right, yeah, I can kind of see that. Equally, I wouldn't have been surprised if we went up there and nicked it somehow. The sort of the vibes weren't quite right, whatever, I don't know. But the manner of that, mate, the manner in which it unfolded, and this does all feel a little out of date now because everything that's happened with Stellini, a lot of news has happened already, but I do think we do need to talk about the game still, because the manner of that is honestly, that opening 20 minutes is, as a 38-year-old that has seen Tottenham at some of their shittest points in their history, that's probably the worst I've ever seen Tottenham. Like, literally the worst I've ever seen us. Like, they were making a point on the Athletic pod that you see non-league football clubs go and play a Championship club or a Premier League club in the FA Cup, and that doesn't happen to them.
Yeah.
What the fuck happened, you know?
I know. I don't know. I think it's only Man City have done it to Norwich, scored 5 goals quicker, isn't it, in the Premier League era?
Was it not? I thought it was Bournemouth. I couldn't remember what it was.
I think it was Norwich, which was 19 minutes. Yeah. 19 minutes. We were about 90 seconds better than Norwich.
90 seconds better than Delia Smith. There you go.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. I know. The thing is, like you said earlier, you weren't the only one beforehand to be a bit like, we could nick something here. And if we had anything about us, it might have been possible, because, like I said, it was generally their biggest game of the season. They were all incredibly nervous about it, and if we went there and tried to impose ourselves, which is an alien concept to know, and possibly nicked the first goal or something like that, that stadium would get very nervous very quickly because they knew it was such a huge game for them. But alas, we just sort of rolled over. I've never seen anything like it. I think ultimately it was down to the back four. The change, I mean, not just those individuals, but the change of system for a game like this, which is always going to be intense and edgy, and, you know, they're always going to just be running at us. To start the back four, 2 wing backs for a start, 4 players that have never played in a back four together, 2 that have never played in a back four, I don't think. For a game like this, it's just bizarre. I know we've all been clamouring for it, but I almost feel like he's done that to appease the fans. And if you're a manager and know what you're doing, you don't do what the fans do, because we're all fucking idiots.
I mean, he looked completely lost on the sideline.
We don't know what we want. He did, yeah, but he's not. I didn't feel sorry for him because he's not a child and he's well paid. But this just wasn't the game for it. You know, if we wanted to experiment with the back four last game at home to Bournemouth, that's a perfect game to experiment with a new setup. If we go 1-0 down, change it. Okay. We changed the setup and we looked immediately a lot more secure. I felt Davinson Sanchez was our best player. which is it's not really a thing, is it? It's like choosing your favourite venereal disease. But I think he was probably our best player.
And fair play to him after
absolutely,
the last game.
And I don't know whether, I mean, he was fit. Lenglet wasn't fully fit, was he? Neither was Ben Davies. I don't know if Sanchez's current mental state on the back of the reception he got last week had anything to do with Stellini. Not starting him and opting to change it to a back four, which would be a shame if that was the case. But I thought he was great when he came on, and I thought, as soon as Lloris went off as well, we just looked so much more solid, didn't we? I know Newcastle weren't playing with the same intensity because they'd already scored fucking 5 goals, but I do think we looked a lot more comfortable. I just think, I really think the setup was to blame, not to appease the players because they were all, pretty much dreadful to a man, but I think that the system just sort of killed us from the start, to be honest.
Do you think this is where Newcastle are at now, right? Because to me, they're miles ahead of schedule. They've got a decent team. Eddie Howe's done a good job, but I still don't really look at them as being a Champions League team. They're going to get a Champions League now. They are. It's going to happen. I think the momentum's going their way. But is this where they are now? Because that's not. We know that they're going to be another Manchester City. It is inevitable. There's no point raging against that. They will be as good as Man City in the next 10 years or so, right? But is this where they're at now already? Are they already a 4th place team? Is that already more of a struggle for Tottenham to get back into that kind of bracket, do you reckon?
I think as much to do with how bad Liverpool and Chelsea have been this season as how bad we've been, to be honest. Sure. I don't think anyone on Newcastle, definitely Newcastle fans, weren't really expecting to finish top 4 at the start of this season. They were talking about, a lot of the fans I know were talking about how nice it'd be to finish in the top half and having no point of the season where they're thinking about relegation. It was obviously quite clear early on in the season that they were going to do that and more, but they're definitely ahead of schedule. And in terms of fan expectations and owner expectations, I think they're ahead of schedule. They've just taken the opportunity with Liverpool and Chelsea having such an off season that we haven't. If we were as good as we were last season, and if even Liverpool and Chelsea were, they wouldn't. They'd probably be 6th, 7th around sort of Brighton. But they've basically just seen a gap in the top 4 and taken their chance, and it's going to help them move a lot quicker than I think they were thinking they'd managed to, both financially and in terms of who they're going to be able to bring in. But if they finish top 4 this season, I can't really see them budging unless there is quite a remarkable turnaround at Liverpool and one at Chelsea, which they'd need quite a manager to do that.
It's funny because you talk about that, and it's bang on where you say that we should have been looking at that game as a club, the players, all of it. We should have been looking at that Newcastle game as like, we've been there, done that. Fuck this lot. Like, top 4 is ours for now, right? We're going to have this fight with them further on down the line to stay a part of this. But for now, we're part of that little bracket. We should be up there, and we should fucking get up for these games. But we just don't.
As I said, just the absolute contrast in the build up to the game in terms between sets of fans and obviously what was going on inside the clubs as well. They were, it was a huge game, and if we went there and won, top 4 wouldn't be over necessarily. It'd be very difficult, but it wouldn't be over, which it is now. But we didn't play like that at all. I don't think we didn't play like anything, but we should have approached the game as big as it is. But I think the momentum we lost the last couple of games really hampered our chances of being able to do that and get up for this game. Off the back of Everton and Bournemouth. I think that just killed us, to be honest.
But doesn't this highlights even further the lack of direction at the club, at Tottenham, the lack of people believing in anything. The people, we're seeing these kind of reports. I think it's Matt Law, so whatever, but saying this kind of that there's a growing level of concern within the club, shared between staff and players, that the club just isn't going anywhere. That the leadership is not taking the club in a good direction. And I think the fact that we can't even seemingly get excited about getting into the Champions League anymore. I think there's probably an element of taking it for granted, and we shouldn't. We've only just gotten back into it this year after a few years of being out of it again. But it just feels that nobody's really that excited. Nobody's excited about what Tottenham are. We just seem to exist as this team that has Harry Kane playing for it, so does all right every now and again.
Well, that's why I was so surprised about the Stellini getting the job when he did, because we were in a, previous season would have killed to be where we were with 10 games to go. We were fourth. I know Newcastle and Man United had a couple of games in hand, but we were fourth when Conte went. With 10 games to go, and 7 of them very winnable. This week's obviously very difficult, which is why I was just so surprised that he just sort of let things run. And if we did get someone in, even if it was Mason at that time, he might have been able to galvanise the players more to get up for these 10 games. But just the Stellini taking it and the continuation of what went before. I mean, part of it, I do think it was a dreadful decision. I can partly see where he's coming from, thinking how good we were in some of those games that Stellini took charge of. Chelsea, Man City, West Ham. But we were also pretty dreadful in a couple, Wolves and Sheffield United. But I do sort of, from that angle, I can sort of see what he was thinking. But all I can think is that the players were just done with Conte and his regime after what he said at Southampton when he threw him under the bus. I can't think of what else has changed. Between those games that we played well in under Stellini and the last few weeks, but I think the players are just done with Conte and anyone associated with him. That's the only change I can think of.
It just feels like the Stellini appointment, because like you say, when I try to put a positive light on it, when I try to put myself into the mindset of Daniel Levy or the people running the club, as I said previously on here, we finished the season strongly last year playing Conte ball. Okay, the fans don't love it, but we did all right. The only bad element seemingly in Conte ball was Antonio Conte himself. He just became such a loose cannon, for whatever. And I will continue to say this probably forever, but for whatever justification anybody wants to bring to that Southampton press conference, it just was totally unprofessional, and it wasn't acceptable. And I'm delighted that he got sacked off the back of that, because I couldn't be asked to listen to that any longer, and I'm sure the players couldn't anymore. But we were still in contention for the top 4, top 5. We didn't like the football; it was horrible to watch, but we were still in contention. So I can understand why the feeling there might be things are actually all right. This bloke just isn't very happy with it. However, that again, really, that's being kind, right? It feels like, again, it's another one of those just woeful misreadings of football, of how it works by Levy and the people that run the club, to allow this to continue to... Because it's finished. Let's be honest, we lost that Brighton game as well. Like, we didn't really win that game. Do you know what I mean? We've been in an absolute shambles. Like that, we thought that Bournemouth game was bad. The manner in which we lost that. I'm sure you felt the same, mate. Watching that Newcastle game, I was thinking it's going to be 10. Like, this is going to be 10.
Honestly, I couldn't see how they wouldn't possibly. It was 20 minutes and they'd scored 5. I honestly couldn't see. It just felt like the game that it felt most to me like was the Brazil-Germany game.
Yeah.
I don't even, where I think Germany did sort of ease off there. And gladly Newcastle dropped their intensity a bit as well when they were 5-0 up, unsurprisingly.
Well, the fans looked shell-shocked as well, right? They were just
they did.
These clips from in the ground, and they're all like, what's going on here?
Yeah. There were people like, even when they were 5-0 up, because there was like 10-15 minutes when it was all pretty quiet in the stadium. You're thinking you're 5-0 up, why is it so quiet? But I do think they were just a bit shell-shocked at how easy it was for them to score 5 goals in 20 minutes. But I mean, I know we knew what we were getting into with Conte instead of Daniel Levy, but he overstepped the mark in comparison. He's always moaned at Chelsea and Inter, but the Southampton, after that, there's no coming back from that. And I do wonder if he toned that down quite considerably and it was just another Conte post-match press conference, whether he'd still be here and whether we'd be in a better place than we are. I don't think yesterday would have happened in the manner it did if he was. And not to give him too much credit, but I don't know. I don't know where we go from there. I wasn't surprised that Stellini went when he did, because there was no way that with a big home game coming up next, there was no way we could go in there having not changed anything after,
He had
after
to, though,
Sunday.
didn't he? Like, it was...
Yeah, 100%, 100%.
Just, there was no... Again, it looks like a shamble on the club. I get it. We've sacked our interim manager and put in another interim manager. It's awful. Like, it's so bad, and it just reeks of mismanagement. However, it had to happen. They could not bury their head in the sand over that.
And it only happened because of the manner of the defeat on Sunday. It's very unlike Levy to, within 3 weeks, admit to such a huge mistake and change it. I don't. If we lost that game 3-1 on Sunday, I'm not sure Stellini would have gone. I don't think he would have at all. It was just the manner of it. That first 20 minutes, you can't let that carry on. Whoever was in charge, they'd have gone. I think it was quite obvious that the players weren't playing for him. And yeah, just like I said, can you imagine what Man United at home on Thursday would have been like, especially if we went a goal down, if Stellini was still in the dugout?
Are you buying that Lloris was injured?
No, definitely not. No, I think it was just getting a bit too embarrassing, wasn't it? I sincerely hope it's the last time we see him in a Spurs shirt. It's obviously a sad way for him to go out, but I think more of this could happen, and it would just get more embarrassing as the games go on if he stays in. To be honest,
that Murphy shot, he didn't even try.
Yeah, but he has done that quite a lot. To be honest, he's one of those keepers who just likes to stand and watch shots go in if they're from a certain distance.
Yeah,
going into the top corner, I do think he could have saved it. I really do. But he didn't try. And the first goal sort of sets precedent. The first goal's him all over, isn't it? The last year or 18 months, unfortunately.
He sat beating him from that angle. Do you know what I mean? For their third or fourth, was it? Their fourth goal, wasn't it?
Yeah, the fourth. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, because the first two were Joe Linton and Murphy. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I obviously hadn't watched the highlights. I watched them just before coming on here, just so it was fresh in my mind for you. Yeah, it's remarkable. I'd recommend watching it again. But yeah, I mean, I hope it's the last time we see him in a Spurs shirt. Whether he can, there'll be a home game before now at the end of the season, Palace or Brentford, where we're in a comfortable enough position to bring him on for 20 minutes. That'd be nice. Better way to say goodbye than Sunday. But yeah, I can't see him starting again, surely.
But where do we go from here, though, mate? Like, because this is okay. So this is a sort of a. There's many different pieces to this because I want to know what you think about Levy, and I want to know what you think about his ability to be able to realise now, or his willingness, not his ability, but his willingness to realise that if we bring in Nagelsmann, we'll talk about managers and that later on toward the end of the pod, but let's just say right here, right now, we bring in Julian Nagelsmann, right? Do you have full faith in Daniel Levy to not want to offer Hugo Lloris a new contract again? To not want to offer Eric Dyer a new contract? To actually realise now it's not just about bringing in the bloke that has done stuff before and expecting something different again, because this is why I've gotten into this rut now, mate, and I always tend to feel that despite being called negative on Twitter a few times, which I do disagree with, I'm generally a more optimistic fan, I find, and I do always try to look with a hopeful lens on things, that we can turn it around with some shrewd management and everything. But everything that the past few years has taught me is that the direction of the club is just all over the shop, that there's no real plan, there's nothing there, and I can just see them getting Nagelsmann in and being like, right, let's tie down a new contract for Lloris. And somebody like Nagelsmann coming into a new club is not going to be quick to get rid of the club captain. He's going to think, well, he's World Cup winner, all that type of shit. But he's, like you say, Lloris has got to go, man. Like, we desperately need a new goalkeeper now. We have done for 2 years. We need new centre-backs. Like, games like the other day even put a question mark over Romero for me, but I think...
On Sunday, I think Romero was awful, yeah. I did.
And it feels unfair. He's very young. He probably needs a more solid partner and all that type of stuff. But on his own, like, as an individual, he was appalling. He was terrible.
Yeah, he was.
We probably needed we definitely need a new creative midfielder if Devine's not going to get given a go. We don't even know how good Devine is yet, if he's ready. Do you know what I mean? It feels like there's a lot of work to be done that now there's no escape from that. You can't just now bring in somebody like Nagelsmann or Enrique and say, try and get another tune out of it. It's done.
It's still it just all depends on whether he finds a director of football who hasn't broken the law multiple times before,
helpful,
allegedly. Because it did look like that's when it was going to change, didn't it? And it did for a while. Paratici was running things in terms of transfers and contracts and stuff like that. No doubt with Levy in his ear on occasion, but it all depends whether best case scenario is when we get Nagelsmann in and he chooses a director of football that he's comfortable working with, not one that Levy's dumping on him. It doesn't sound like Scott Munn, who's coming as head of football, is going to be involved particularly on the playing side of things. It sounds like he's sort of more of a commercial background, so that's fine if it's that's the way it stays and that's where he works. It all depends entirely on whether we get a new director of football in, one that wants to work with the manager and vice versa, to allow Levy to actually take a step back that we thought he was going to a couple of years ago. I don't know, but I just can't see Levy. If, like you said, if there are players that he likes and wants around, I can't see him, completely backing away if there are players that he wants to reward for their fine form with a new deal. But Lloris is one I absolutely can't see staying on. Whoever comes in, whatever happens, I think he's absolutely gone in the summer. And I think that'd be his choice as much as anyone's, to be honest.
What else do you think we need? Would you keep hold of Eric Dyer, for example, as a squad player, or do you think let's just move him on?
He wouldn't be one of the first names out the door, and I think we've got to be realistic in terms of how much we can do in one summer and how many players will realistically leave and we'll find buyers for. As a squad player, especially if we qualify for Europe, I'd keep him. But then if we do that, we're only probably two injuries away from him starting games again, and I do think we very, very much need a clean sweep and a fresh slate. And I think he has massive drops in form, probably once or twice. There was a year, I would say. There was a period under Conte when he was great. Yeah. Other than that, he often gets it together for a few games and then, drops a clanger or, I do think he's one of those who's got to go. But, he's in our player committee.
That's it.
The four-man player committee with Laurie.
Three of them are shite. Yeah, three of them are shite, and one of them's going to go to Chelsea.
Yeah, I'd bin Højbjerg as well. I know that's not necessarily always popular 100%. With people, but I think he reeks of this sort of post-2020 period of the club, and I'd like him gone as well. But he's definitely not going to be one of the first. First on the chopping block, I don't think. As far as Eric Dyer, I would like him to go, but I don't think he's going to be one of the first to go. I'd rather he started games than Davinson Sanchez. And we're not going to buy more than two centre-halves, are we? So I think Eric Dyer's probably going to have to stay on. Although I've also seen, talk that we're looking to keep Lenglet. I've absolutely no idea why. But again, maybe under a more forward-thinking manager in a back four like he's played before at Barcelona, he might look a bit better. But we've seen enough of Eric Dyer and the likes of Sanchez to know that where their ceiling is, and I think it's definitely time for him to go. Yeah,
just feels so. But even with Lenglet, it just feels so placeholder, doesn't it? It doesn't.
Yeah, it does. Which is what he is.
It's just this bloke's available and he's sort of all right, so let's just buy it. It's just like you say. It's that sort of post 2020 malaise at like the club's in where you're just like.
There's a malaise every fucking summer now, isn't there?
Yeah.
Apart from last summer. Which,
what is this,
I mean, I don't know, mate. We all thought last summer went well and we were all really happy, and look what's happened, Armageddon. So, maybe something good will come out of this. But yeah, it entirely depends on the new manager and if we get director of football in. They're going to decide who stays, who goes, and who we bring in. But yeah, there's not many that have been around for as long as Eric Dyer has. I'd like to keep.
I would have liked to think, because talking about sort of the players we bought last year, it's safe to say we haven't seen anything of, not even close to the best of Bissouma or Richarlison, for example.
No, which I don't place any blame on them for, to be honest. I know Richarlison.
A lot of people get quite pissy with Richarlison, but it's not. He's barely played. He's barely been given a chance to play.
I know he could have nicked a couple more goals, obviously. Yeah. But he's never had a run of games, and especially in one of his favourite positions. We've always played him on the right, which is his least favourite along the front three. we've had perfect opportunities this season with Son so woefully out of form to give Richarlison a run, and he hasn't had it, which just is baffling. Like, I don't know when Conte wanted Richarlison, and I don't know when he was planning on playing him. Unless there was one of the front three had a huge drop in form, as two of them have this season, and he still hasn't played. He's only started a handful of games. I'd like to see him, under whoever comes in. He's definitely not one that I'm concerned about. I'd like to see him in a team that's attacking and confident and playing football. The same goes for everyone we signed last summer. I was quite excited with the signings going into the season. But yeah, we've just not seen any of them really, have we?
I would have liked to have seen Pochettino get his hands on Bissouma and Richarlison, but it doesn't look like that's going to happen now, mate.
It doesn't, no.
Because it's pretty much nailed on, isn't it, that Pochettino's going to rock up at Chelsea now?
Yeah, it's done by all accounts. Yeah, which is nice, isn't it?
I mean, when it was becoming a reality yesterday, I was genuine. I was losing my fucking mind.
It was just yesterday. Before yesterday, I really thought that there was still a chance that it would not necessarily fall apart, but they'd change their mind and try and go for a bigger name like they usually do.
An 11th hour on Enrique or something, right?
Yeah, something like that. I always thought it was going to be Enrique going there, but for whatever reason that hasn't happened. The same with Nagelsmann. Honestly, I couldn't really believe it. I don't know. People are saying you can't blame him. He hasn't got a job and stuff like that. But I don't buy it, to be honest. We know what Chelsea meant to him in 5 years at Tottenham. They were his number one. That was the number one game for him. And for a lot of the time he was here, it was the number one game for the fans as well. Just because of who we were competing with. He knows what that means to Tottenham fans. He's heard the songs that they sing every game about Tottenham. He knows what they think of us. I think he might have had to sit on his hands for another 6 months a year to get a decent offer, but one would have come along for him. It's people talk about, but he's unemployed. Would expect him to do. He's a multimillionaire for a start. He's not fucking struggling, is he? I think he could have held on for another offer for someone that wasn't Chelsea. So yeah, as far as I'm concerned, it's closure for me because fuck him. To be honest, I can't see how he could possibly do it. Saying everything he has in the past about Chelsea as well. People saying, it's not like he went to Arsenal, but Chelsea was Arsenal to him.
It's not that far removed, really, is it? Let's be honest.
Not at all. No, not at all. It's just something you didn't expect from him, really. Like, I know it's very naive of us, but he did seem quite different, didn't he, to quite a lot of the characters you get in modern football. He did seem, very emotionally switched on, emotionally charged. You just didn't really see that this was something that he'd do. But yeah, here we are.
I think, I was talking to Foynes about it just on Twitter, and I think the thing that really gets me about it is it's just like, where do we find solace in any of this shit? Because the past few years, we've at least had we didn't get anywhere, but the journey we had under Pochettino, 16-17, the last year at White Hart Lane, that core group that we had, the Champions League, Ajax, all these sort of memories. It's like we don't. And I know that it sounds so moany and it's so like poor me, but of course we don't even get that. Of course we don't even get to keep our fucking happy place. Yeah. The manager who's been the greatest manager since Bill Nick, he just has been at this club, is going to go up the road to a fucking, like you say, an abomination of a football club that sings "We Hate Tottenham" every single game, let alone all the fucking anti-Semitic shit they sing at us. And whether or not he's fully aware of that type of shit, it really fucking rankles. It's just very hard to reconcile, man. You feel, because I do have that torn thing of like, I get it. Like, he is an emotional guy, and I wonder if, us spurning him so publicly, as we clearly have done, plays into his decision if he's acting out, or maybe it's honestly that it's not that deep. That it's another one of those lessons in life that really he had a good time at Spurs, but he He doesn't care that much. He's from Murphy in Argentina. He's not from Tottenham.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
you know, his club is like Newell's Old Boys. You know, it's like he
But
had
he's
some.
always, yeah, he's always just drummed it in that we really thought he got it, and he did, I think. And
He was on BT
drummed
Sport
that in
a
it,
couple of years ago, or a year and a
Yeah.
bit ago, saying that I love that club. I can't wait to be back there one day.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. You know, people saying, you know, who can blame him? He was, you know, unceremoniously sacked. Didn't even get a proper chance to say bye to the players. There might be some ill feeling there, but at every opportunity he's talked about Tottenham, it doesn't sound like that at all, does it? Like he still obviously holds huge affection for us. It doesn't feel like he's always been out for revenge since he got sacked. It's felt like the opposite, to be honest. I think I don't know. Obviously, I don't think this happens if we get in touch with him and ask him to come back. I think he'd come back. But it sounds like there's been absolutely no contact there from Levy's end whatsoever. But I still don't think that necessarily means it's okay for him to go and join Chelsea, to be honest.
But what the fuck is that about, though, mate? From our end, like, what is that? Is it the board thinking we're above him now? Oh, we've done that. It doesn't really matter anymore. Not that it doesn't matter, but just we can't go over that. Like, I understand, right? If you can to turn your nose up at that type of thing, if you have a clear fucking direction the other way, but they don't. Like, it's a mess, and it's been a fucking jumbled mess. And for all the kind of talk that, oh, the club, there's, you know, people within the club think that it didn't end very well. It's horse shit. After it went tits up with Nuno Espirito Santo, we were straight on the blower to Pochettino, trying to get him out of his contract, trying to work out how much we'd have to pay PSG to get him back, until Antonio Conte probably gave us the slightest inclination that he might take the job. And then we gave up on that. And now this year, Nagelsmann's there, Enrique's there, maybe even Vincent Kompany's there, a few other options. We suddenly think we're above Pochettino again. This sort of lack of, I don't know, I guess loyalty from the club in a way, it's really irritated me, you know?
It's horrible, man. I don't know. I mean, I read something that we're looking for a manager who's in the position of a 2014 Pochettino as opposed to a 2023. But I don't buy that if we're talking to Nagelsmann and Enrique, to be honest. You know, if we brought in a Kompany or a Carrick or someone like that, I'd sort of see that a bit more. But to be honest, Pochettino seems absolutely perfect. You know, is that mix of, you know, he's only been a manager for 8-9 years at this level. His ideas are still new, they're still fresh. If he wasn't our old manager and he was, you know, he'd had the background that he had, we'd be going for him. I'm pretty sure of it. You know, especially someone who's out of work at the moment. I don't know what Levy's thinking, to be honest. Whether it's a pride thing, he doesn't want to go back, or it's just gone to his head and he thinks we're above that now. We're on a different plane where we can choose the big names and the top managers because we've got a nice stadium. I do think that partly plays into it psychologically with him, to be honest.
It felt like just such an easy win, though, man. Like,
the
PR,
to get the fans back on side as well. Yeah, absolutely.
They're pretty much, let's say a conservative estimate, 60% of the stadium was singing for him to come back for the past 2 home games. You know?
Yeah. It seems like such an easy win, but. Yeah, I don't know. I was clamouring for him to come back in January. We knew the direction this was going in January, didn't we? After the World Cup, after the first couple of games, after that, nothing had changed. People thought it might suddenly click for us in the second half of the season, that we've been saving ourselves. I think that was pretty evident that wasn't the case after a couple of games back after the World Cup, and Conte should have gone then, to be honest. Especially when we knew we wasn't signing a new deal. If if before the World Cup he was, we were still winning games and he was talking about the possibility of staying on next season, that might have been different. But when we knew for a fact he was leaving in the summer anyway, and we were so poor and so out of form in January, that would have been the time to pull the trigger. But no, obviously, Conte deserves more loyalty than Pochettino, was sacked in November, 5 months after a Champions League final, because top 4 was in danger, allegedly.
Just indulge me in the nightmare, Con, because what you touch on there, closure, it is important, and I do think him going to Chelsea, that is closure. That's not the couple of years time we'll get him because we always hire ex-Chelsea bosses. That it's pretty significant, him going there.
Yeah, but considering what he meant to us,
It's hard to reconcile. I've like the Father Ted meme doing the rounds there, so I hear you're a racist now, Father, which has been pretty good. But indulge me in the nightmare, Con. I think he's going to do really well at Chelsea with that squad of players.
I don't.
Do you not? Interesting.
No. For a start, I before Chelsea even came along, I thought it was now or never for us, probably with him this summer.
Yeah, agreed.
Now, obviously, Chelsea have come along. I think it's completely done, to be honest. Although, does it make it more likely that Levy rehires him after he's managed Chelsea? Probably. But especially in terms of, the fans, I do think it's done. It's quite a, pointed decision from him. I think he knows what he's doing. I just, I think there's huge swathes of the Chelsea fan base who don't want him and don't like him, as there was with Potter. I just can't see him getting the time. If it goes like his first 6 months did at Tottenham, 5 months did at Tottenham, which people often forget when they talk about him, it was looking pretty ropey at points. And I just don't see him getting the time. With the money that Todd Bowley spent at Chelsea, I just don't see him giving Poch a year or two to get things right. I think if it's, like as it was with Potter, I think if they're struggling 6 months in, and the fans will turn quite quickly on Pochettino, given his background, and they're Chelsea fans, they will. I just can't see how he could ride it out until he's got them doing what they want. By all accounts as well, just going from a few things in what Lampard said, it's an out of shape squad. The fitness isn't where it should be, and that's everything for Pochettino, isn't it? I know he's going to get a pre-season with them, but I really think it's going to take him a while to get them playing like he wants them to, and get them up to the levels that he needs for his size to perform. I just don't think he'll get the time there, and I don't think he'll get the patience from the fans or Todd Bowley for that matter.
The thing is mad, like the stuff you hear about Chelsea now. I mean, I know it is a particularly toxic club. It sounds like a particularly toxic environment. It has done just forever, really. At least in the post Abramovich takeover, when they became like a super club. But it does make me wonder, like, fuck, man, like Graham Potter must have been a real fraud, because it probably unfair on him in some regards, like taking that step up to a club like Chelsea. But it really sounds like he didn't do a good job there at all. That it wasn't actually that unfair, the way he was treated, like to be sacked.
He was roundly beaten by Stellini's Spurs as well, which probably says it all. Yeah. And they were awful in that game. They were
awful. Worst I've ever seen them in since they've been good.
Yeah, and for a lot of the same, they just looked completely blunt, didn't they? Which was the main thing I thought. They've obviously got a lot of technically brilliant players. Joe Felix is a brilliant player. Even Havertz, but they're not going to get you 20 goals, are they? I think it might have been a different story if Potter had, a proper number 9. They've got a fucking £100 million number 9 in Lukaku out on loan. I think that team is different with a number 9 and someone's finish the chances they create. But...
Oh, you're leading me up to my next bit very nicely there, Connor. You're leading me up very nicely.
Yeah, I thought that was coming. Well, I thought it was coming given you sent me earlier an AI image of Harry Kane in a Chelsea shirt with the Premier League trophy. So, like the fucking sadist you are.
Well, let's do it, mate. Like, would you be surprised to see them offer us Lukaku and a bit of money for Kane this summer? If Pochettino's especially their manager?
I wouldn't be surprised to see them offer it. No, I think they quite possibly will. But I really just don't think Kane would do it. I know that might be naive for me, but I just don't think Kane would ever go to Arsenal or Chelsea. I don't think it's the same as Pochettino. I just can't see Kane doing it. I think he'd go anywhere else, but I really don't think he'd go to either of those two clubs, even with Pochettino.
What makes you so sure? I think because he loves John Terry and all that. He loves that. Let's be honest. I think the Brexitiness of Chelsea, I think sort of would appeal to Kane on a certain level.
I don't know. I just can't see him doing it. And maybe I'm giving him too much credit, but I really don't think he'd cross that threshold because he'd be dead to us. Like, he knows that, and he's our fucking record scorer. It would be very us, though, to be fair, to have a record scorer that we despise. Just as our best manager in the last 40 years is now going to be despised by a lot of our fans.
I saw somebody on Twitter say, Jimmy Greaves played for Chelsea and no one cared. It's like, shut up.
Fucking cares, mate. When was that, the 40s? Nobody's asked. And I'm pretty sure that rivalry wasn't the same as it was. No. I know we've never liked Chelsea, but it feels like the last 20 years or so, the Tottenham Chelsea thing's on a whole new level compared to what it was. You know, I know we've never liked them. It's Chelsea, but you know, before the last, I'd say 10, 15 years, they were never really close to Arsenal, were they? In terms of, you know, the game that fans look to. You know.
Yeah, not from. I've always sort of hated them because I've grown up around a lot of them. That's the thing. So it's always been a bit different. But they've always fucking hated us, man. Like,
yeah, we're everyone's fucking number one, aren't we?
But they were a bit more West Hammy right before, in terms of like we weren't that asked about them, and they're still singing "We Hate Tottenham" before every game. Like it's just.
Yeah, they do. Before every game, I'm looking forward to the camera panning to Poch's faces.
Which what I'm saying, his face on a fucking big banner in the shed end.
As they're shouting, "We Hate Tottenham," yeah, I know it's gonna be fucking horrible. But I honestly don't think Kane would do it. I really don't. I also think it'd be a huge risk for Kane as well, because they could be awful again next season. They could feasibly be awful again next season. Chelsea, there's no guarantees there. I think that's why I think Man United is a big risk for him as well.
I think United's a huge risk for him, man.
Yeah,
if he wants to win the big stuff, like if he wants to win Premier League or Champions League, he's got a bit more of a chance at United than he does at Spurs.
Yeah. But I just don't.
They're miles off City.
Yeah, they are. Yeah, and Arsenal now. They're miles off Arsenal now, but he wouldn't do that, would he? No, he wouldn't. He's never done it before. But yeah. I think it's a huge risk. I think it only makes sense for him to leave if he's not guaranteed, but if he has a proper shout of a league or Champions League, whether that's abroad or here. I don't think it's worth him doing it for a Carabao. You know, I know they're in the FA Cup final, United, but they'll lose to City. I don't see how it's worth it from his point of view.
If he goes to United, they don't win the Premier League. It becomes about the failed signing of Harry Kane.
Yeah, absolutely. That's why they'd be buying them, to take that next step and do that. They're third now, and they're probably going to finish third. Newcastle could pip them, I don't know. But they'll be signing Harry Kane for whatever 80 to 100 million because he's running out of contract to take that next step and win a league or Champions League. That's why they'd be doing it. And he'd absolutely be the scapegoat if they were shit next season. Of course he would. But that's why I just don't think it's worth it for him. I think City was, probably the perfect move for him in 2021, and I can see why he pushed for it, to be honest. Yeah. I hated it at the time.
Of course.
But, we're just back there again, aren't we? There's comparisons for Kane's face at full time on Sunday, then, I think that famous one of him looking up in the sky and saying, what's the fucking point when we lost at home to Villa in 2021? He's here 2 years later. I absolutely can see why he wants out, and I think he should leave, to be honest. I'd be very surprised if he stayed, and I don't think he should stay.
You know what, though, mate? And this is, honestly, the City thing fucked me off, but in terms of, I've always sort of had his back, really. The City thing did piss me off, but for the most part, I've still reverted back to this kind of, I get it, though. I feel it.
Yeah, absolutely.
I understand where he's coming from.
Yeah.
He does so much for the team and this and that. But you know what? The Newcastle game on the weekend is the first time, it's genuinely the first time when I've ever thought, actually, fuck you, man. Like you're still supposed to be a fucking leader on the pitch. And he did score that goal, and it was brilliant.
Goal, wasn't it?
But a lot of he's throwing his hands up, he's sighing, he's looking up in the sky. I'm like,
they were all doing that, to be fair, but yeah.
They were, but also, lead from the fucking front, mate. And I know that he has done, and he has allowed these moments, but there's just, ultimately, my loyalty is always going to be to Tottenham. That's the thing, right? And that's why it really fucks me off, and it has done for the past couple of years, the whole Conte was right, we should listen to what... I don't care what some fucking mercenary that comes into our club for a couple of years thinks about the club. I could give a shit. I'm not going to sit there and listen to him slate the club, and I'm not going to have this self-flagellation about it. I don't want to sit there and hear somebody talk about how bad the club is, Like, it's just... It's bollocks, and... it leaves. Look, it's like when Kane leaves. Like I think we're in real bad trouble. Like
it's gonna be horrible, man. Like even yesterday, I saw a 5-6 minute compilation on Twitter saying thanks for the memories or something. Just the compilation of him from the start to now, and it was horrible, man. It's gonna be fucking awful.
Do you think he's because to me, like in my head now, it doesn't matter if we bring Nagelsmann. We could probably sign Pep Guardiola. Maybe that would be different. All right, but in terms of a realistic candidate, Enrique or Nagelsmann, I don't think anybody. I don't think Kane is staying at Tottenham now for anybody. I don't
think he should. I
think
don't think he should.
You know,
I think he should go. Yeah, it's going to be horrible, but I do think he should go. But again, he's not exempt. You know, we've been awful this season. I know he's been our best player, but he's not perfect, and he's not exempt from criticism. You know, it's hard to bring it up, but he's missed big chances this season in competitions in the FA Cup and Champions League.
Yep.
Milan and Sheffield United, he had similar headers that he put wide that he'd always score. He's not exempt at all, but I do think it's time for him to move on.
Do you sell him then and not let him go for free?
Probably. I think it's hanging over him and it's hanging over us a bit as well, just the narrative about him every year that we, you know, as soon as it becomes clear, you know, as soon as we're out of options, potentially winning anything, there's a cloud again that, you know, the stories come out like clockwork, don't they, every year with Kane. And I think it is a bit of a cloud hanging over us as well. And if we are going to do a proper fresh start, which we definitely need more than anything, I don't think he can stay, really. You know, he's my favourite ever player and he always will be unless he goes to Arsenal or Chelsea. Yeah. But I do just think it's time. Unfortunately for him, you know, City have got Haaland now. And like I said, that's why it would have been perfect for him to go in 2021. Not perfect for us, perfect for him to go to City, and he you know, won a couple of leagues by now. But yeah, I don't know. I just think it's time, to be honest.
I still wouldn't be overly. I keep going on about it, but I still wouldn't be overly surprised if City went for him. Still,
I don't know.
Cover for Haaland, cover for De Bruyne. You know, I just think the attitude, all of it, would still.
Yeah, I'd rather that than United, to be honest. I'd much rather that than United. I'd rather he went abroad than anywhere, to be honest. But if he was going to go somewhere here, then I don't feel anything about Man City, to be honest. They're sort of nothing, are they?
They're not even Man City anymore, are they? They're just a thing that's
no, I'm not bothered. I'm not bothered if he goes there.
Not at all.
But it would be horrible to see him in another shirt. Whatever happens, it will. But yeah, I don't know. It's just time.
He ain't going to go abroad, is he? I can't see it.
No, he wants the record, doesn't he? That's pretty obvious. And he will get it if he stays here and stays fit.
I reckon the only place he goes is Madrid. I think that's the only place that I can't see Bayern. I just don't think they're. And I know it sounds ridiculous coming from a Tottenham fan, all that shit, but I don't think they're big enough. You know, I don't think. I think the German league's not there. I don't think winning a Bundesliga with Bayern Munich.
It's not going to quench that thirst, is it?
There's not really that magic to it. Whereas winning La Liga with Real Madrid and being part of that mythology, it's big for a footballer, right? That whole thing.
Yeah, it's huge. It's huge. And but Benzema's, what is he, 35, 36, and he's still incredible. So
yeah.
I don't know, to be honest. I also don't necessarily think they have the money, which is a strange thing to say about Real Madrid, but outside of the Premier League now, it looks pretty tough for the top clubs to be splashing, 100 million on players, especially if they want Bellingham as well, which, who knows, but I don't know, man. I don't know. I wouldn't begrudge him going anywhere apart from Chelsea or Arsenal, to be honest, this summer. I wouldn't.
So, fuck Harry Kane.
Yeah.
Where do we go next, mate? Where do Tottenham Hotspur go next? Because it seems that I would say the four prominent candidates at the moment seem to be Nagelsmann, Kompany, Enrique, and Arne Slot.
I don't want Arne Slot. I've already made my mind up on him for some reason. It's based on very little because I haven't watched much Feyenoord, but I just get fraud vibes, and I just partly it's very silly, but seeing the clubs that are linked with him, Leeds and Palace and Tottenham, like I don't know. I know, but that's very silly. I've had a go at Daniel Levy for only going for big names. He might be alright, but I just think he's a bit too Dutch. No offense, Charlotte, but just like I don't know. I'd like him to have managed somewhere that isn't the Eredivisie. People are saying pointing at Ten Hag. I think he's a bit of a one-off in terms of the Dutch league in being not a fraud basically in terms of managers in the Premier League. I don't want Arne Slot, but I wouldn't be surprised if it's Arne Slot. I think that's more likely than anyone else. If we don't get Nagelsmann, I think it will probably be him. In an ideal world, we'll get Nagelsmann, and Nagelsmann will get a director of football that he wants to work with and knows. People have talked about Ralph Rangnick. Obviously, it didn't work out for him as a manager, but he's still a very good director.
It surely won't be Rodgers, right? Please, no.
I don't think so. Just from a PR point of view, I don't think Levy can get away with that. You know, I don't know. We need a properly clean slate. We need a fresh start. Nagelsmann's literally perfect, I think, to take over. His name's not Mauricio Pochettino, but other than that, I think is exactly what we need. You know, one of the best young coaches around. I don't know. It all depends on what we do in the summer, basically. If Kane goes, I wouldn't see us splashing out on another number 9. I don't really think there's many out there that we would. I think
be Richarlison, wouldn't it? Yeah.
Yeah. Which is fair enough. I'm happy to give him a go leading the line because that's what we bought him for and he hasn't done it. He did it once at Sheffield United and he was awful. But it's not fair to judge him on one game. I think it would be him, yeah. You know, we've got so much young talent there that's untapped. In terms of Udoji's coming in, Spence, obviously. We've got him, Basuma's still a young player, Skip, Sarr,
Porro's still a young player, really, isn't he? Like,
yeah, he was 23, 24. There's a skeleton of he might be 23. There's a skeleton there of probably decent young talent there. That the right manager playing the right system for the players we've got could get a lot out of. But I do think it really is time for we've been saying it since fucking 2018, man. A lot of the old guard to go. It's been called for 5 years. It was 5 years ago by Pochettino. But we just can't be seeing the same faces next season. I think that's the main thing. We just have to freshen it up. We have to freshen it up. This is, this last chance saloon, man. We have to just bite the bullet, even if that means Kane. I think Son will stay. But, the likes of Dyer, Sanchez, Lloris, I just think they've all got to go. I know it's unlikely that we're going to be able to find buyers for all of them in one window, but we can't be seeing the same old faces turn out first game next season.
We've got Lascelles and Ndombele coming back probably this summer as well, haven't we? Reguilon,
Yeah, and Ndombele coming back with a fucking league medal around his neck. Fair play to him, even though he's played about 27 minutes.
Yeah, but fuck all for that. Right?
Yeah, we've got a lot to do in the summer, man. It all depends on how well we execute that, really. But that's why we can't wait till July or August to get our new manager in. They have to come in as soon as the season's over. Have a look at the squad, put their stamp on it. Get what they want across, the players they want, the players they don't want. We just can't be doing another 2021. We just can't.
I was going to ask you. Well, I was going to ask you what you think of Kompany, but I've just seen now, just literally read that it sounds like he's told Burnley he's going to take them into the Premier League. That he's not going to leave the club. I mean,
yeah, I'm not surprised.
Don't know if that changes if we came up with something concrete, but.
It was a huge risk. I think it would be quite silly of us to put him ahead of Nagelsmann in the shortlist. I wouldn't have, hated it if Nagelsmann fucked us off and we went to Kompany then. But I think if there is an opportunity to get Nagelsmann now, I think it's pretty crazy to talk to anyone else that isn't Mauricio Pochettino at the moment. I think it's a huge, huge opportunity. Like I said, like you touched on at the start, the most important thing is Levy and getting a director of football in and distancing him from the football side of things. As again, we've been talking about for years. But yeah, next season's, if it's Nagelsmann and if it's the new director of football and they're working in tandem, I think things could change very quickly and I think the mood could shift very quickly as well. And it needs to.
There is something exciting about Nagelsmann. I think the only thing that concerns me about him is just he does come with a big reputation. And it feels like a real middle ground, right? Because I know that in truth, he is a young manager. He is probably pretty much perfect for Tottenham in, I think, the type of football he wants to play, his emphasis on working with youth players, making shrewd acquisitions, this sort of thing, right? But it's the fact that he is a big name again now, that it feels like it's some way, it's halfway towards Tottenham having a rebuild, but it's also Tottenham expecting quickish success, and that's maybe not just so much from the fans or the club itself, but from the media. You look at the likes of Matt Law, the way he jumps on anything to do with Tottenham. If we're sort of finishing 6th place next year under Nagelsmann, has Nagelsmann flopped at Tottenham? Has he done it? Has he done that? Has he done this? We were seeing even Pape Matar dug out this week for his shambolic performance. He was completely thrown under the bus. But
Yeah, he was. They all were.
my point is that like the reporting on Tottenham is seldom ever in good faith, I find, and
Yeah.
I just wonder if there would be a bit more credit in the bank if you did hire Kompany versus
I don't know.
someone like Nagelsmann.
I do think Nagelsmann is somewhat of a happy medium compared to what has gone before. I know he has managed Bayern Munich, but I don't think it's like hiring a Mourinho or a Conte or even maybe an Enrique.
Yeah.
I don't think it's quite on that level. I do think he is closer to the middle of being, between a Kompany and Mourinho. Sorry, I'm pretty sure that's not how he'd like to be described ever. But I don't think it's quite the same as hiring Mourinho was or hiring Antonio Conte was. I think that I don't necessarily think that would be the case. I think if it's quite clear, to see the direction we're going and a style being implemented and an actual philosophy being implemented, and there's actually a bit of forward momentum, I don't necessarily think it matters if we finish sixth next season. I don't think people would be under pressure. It just has to be, we have to get some momentum back into the club, and we have to have a style that we can see. That's why Arsenal stuck by Arteta. We'd have sacked Arteta 3 times before now. But the next manager we get, especially if it's a young manager like Nagelsmann, we have to give him 3 years, unless we're literally about to get relegated. If we're seeing enough glimpses of what he's trying to do and what he's trying to implement, we just have to give him time. Another part of the reason why I think it is the time for Kane to go, to be honest, because he can't start from the ground up again. Harry Kane going into 30 in the summer. I think if we're going to do it properly, part of that is Kane moving on and a young manager coming in and being given the time they need. What is it
that you want to see, mate? Like just as a fan, because you're talking about the momentum, you're talking about a new, like a fresh start and everything. What is it that really? What does that look like to you? What's the blue sky for next season? Harry Kane goes in summer. We get 80 mil for him. Maybe a new goalkeeper, whatever. I don't know. Like, where are the green shoots for you?
Green shoots is that Nagelsmann's not told us to fuck off yet. Fuck knows, you might have done after this podcast, so it might date quite quickly. But the thing that's given me a bit of hope is that it's hung around for a few days and not been shot down yet. Since he fucked Chelsea off. But green shoots for me, getting him in, I'd like to enjoy the journey again. I'd like some momentum. It's not necessarily where we finish in the Premier League. This season we could finish in the Premier League in the same place we finished in Pochettino's first season. And how different is the mood? The polar opposites. We might still finish 5th this season. We probably won't, but we might. But, compare the mood at the end of, was it 2013-14? So now, it's polar opposites. I just like to enjoy it again. I'd like a manager to come in and unite the fan base. I know that's very much easier said than done with our fan base, but Pochettino did it. I'd just like some forward momentum. I'd like to see us play an entertaining football. I'd like to not see us play 3 centre-halves and 2 defensive midfielders at home to bottom half teams, as we have every game since 2020. I'd like to enjoy it again, to be honest. I know that sounds, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. I know it sounds a bit loserish, but I'm not necessarily, I'm not going to be demanding trophies in top 4 if Nagelsmann comes in. I'd just like to see, a bit of spark. I'd like to see the players enjoying it. I'd just like to enjoy, going to watch Tottenham again, because I do, obviously seeing your lovely face. But as soon as the whistle goes, until the final whistle, it's pretty shit at the moment, isn't it? I'd just like to enjoy the whole package again.